he's been in jail for 21 years, 7 months. My brother's been dead for 22 years. Nobody's giving him another chance. This guy's a savage.
Suspected white supremacists like this do not care about seeking justice. It gives them great pleasure to harm innocent black people and punish them for crimes they didn't commit. Punishing innocent black citizens is more rewarding to them, even if the real criminal gets away with harming their family members. Hello, today I will be doing a video on Trial 4, a case where a 19-year-old boy named Sean Ellis was sentenced to life in prison for the execution of a cop that he was innocent of. Episode 1 deals with the story of a detective named John Mulligan who was shot multiple times in the face and found dead in his car in front of a Walgreens. We learn that this case was doomed from the get-go because not only were the police force incompetent, but they were also racist. And this was during a time in Boston where the police department was seriously corrupt, even more corrupt than today, if you can believe that. The episode plays off like any other murder show you've seen on Discovery Channel. The setup reminded me of Unsolved Mysteries, which is also on Netflix, so I was immediately hooked. Although a lot of what was going on didn't surprise me, I never winced or thought to myself, oh my god, I can't believe this is all happening. Like, of course this is happening. At a certain point, you just get numb to it. A cop gets shot. The cop has a checkered past for over arresting, of course. Black guy somehow gets blamed, of course. This is nothing new. Episode 2. We find out how Sean grew up. His mom was into drugs, and she used the drugs to cope with her son being railroaded with false charges. We hear about another similar case where a white man murdered his wife and blamed it on an imaginary black man in order to collect on the insurance policy, and also how the whole black community was terrorized by police because of this make-believe black man. None of this shocked me. Again, while watching, I had no reaction because I'm so used to it. And if you're someone who's surprised by anything going on, I don't know where you've been.
Yeah, they stopped me in the street and they pushed me against the wall just because I'm black. Well, were the police aggressive? Yeah, they probably were. But as far as them abusing them and all that,
This guy is such a piece of shit. I wanted to punch my computer screen every time he showed up and opened his mouth. This piece of filth actually said, yeah, the cops were aggressive, but abusive? And then he shrugs his shoulders. I know I said I wasn't surprised by any of this, but it's one thing to see the system as a whole, but when you hear actual individuals speak such racist drivel, and these were the people that had badges and power, it makes me sick to my stomach. Like, these bastards had the right to live a full life terrorizing people based on skin color, and then you have innocent people like Sean locked up for half of their lifespan. It just makes my blood boil. However, what really stuck to me was the segment involving Rosa Sanchez. She was a fake witness who worked with the racist detectives who got Sean locked up. It's just more proof that black people have no business supporting immigration. We have no allies. We have no friends. These people are our enemies. There is no black and brown coalition. These people come to this country and actively work against us to get in good graces with white supremacy. It's sickening. Episode 3 deals with Sean having to go through 3 different trials for the crime he had no involvement in. It's very eye-opening, and it showed that there are times where a white juror is actually fair and open-minded and doesn't just want to convict based on race. It also showed, and this is just my suspicion, that with all the trials that took place, that the system was getting better at picking an all-white supremacist jury in order to get the conviction they wanted. Because how do you go from over a week of deliberation to just 3 hours? So they tainted the jury pool. Episode 4 exposes the corrupt racist detectives who targeted black people and framed them as criminals in order to steal their money. I thought it was hilarious when this piece of shit said the Mulligan shooting was clean despite these two detectives being proven that they planted evidence. It reminded me so much of OJ and how Mark Furman had a history of targeting black people and planting evidence. And there are still non-black people who still ignore the evidence tampering. Anti-black racists will always tell the biggest lies with a straight face, and it's infuriating. Sean also gets support from a mother who he knew back in elementary school when he was friends with her son. I'm going to admit, I didn't like this at first because it came across to me as her showing off her nice house and saying her son would have never been treated the same way. Later on, I did change my mind about her after finding out what she did. She actually did do something to get him out of there. And the reason why I had my defenses up about her is because too many times fake liberals will give a lot of lip service, but at the end of the day, they do nothing about it. I wish they would have talked more about the economic disparity and how black people are purposely kept away from wealth, and how that is basically the only reason why her son and Sean had two different upbringings. Later on, Sean comes across a lawyer named Rosemary who has a history of fighting the police and freeing black inmates, and he has to wait years in hopes that she will represent him. I did think the lawyer was such a badass, and she was so no nonsense, and I loved her right away. And you can tell just by the way she spoke that she was a more skilled lawyer, a skilled lawyer that Sean needed right from the beginning. Episode 5. Sean and his lawyers fight for a fourth trial when they expose Mulligan's past. A lot of people were saying that they couldn't believe that certain evidence about the corrupt detectives were hidden before Sean's trial, and how these detectives were able to work on other cases even after they were being investigated. And I'm just shaking my head, because these people are acting confused as to how the system could sleep at night knowing they were sending an innocent man to prison. And I'm thinking it's because he's black. They don't care and took pleasure in doing all of this because they don't like his skin color. Where is the confusion? These people are anti-black white supremacists. What is the confusion? It's cut and dry. I honestly think these racists find it better that an innocent black person is punished rather than a guilty one, because it shows how much power they have. I also noticed that some white supremacists will have a touch of guilt because the corruption is so right in their face and it's too overwhelming to the point where it's hard to ignore. The prosecutor Phyllis Broker, aka Syphilis Broker, is a good example of someone who may fight to do the right thing, but at the end of the day, when the pressure is on, she will get right on code with Team White Supremacy and act dumb and naive. All of a sudden, when she's questioned 2 decades later, she's deaf, dumb, and blind.
I don't recall.
And doesn't know which way is up. She made terrible threats against a single black mother, and then in the next breath, she will call out detectives on suspicion of coaching a witness. She's a real piece of crap. At least show the courtesy of being consistent. Episode 6. I could be wrong, but it seems as though if you are as unlucky as Sean, your chances of getting out are slim, unless you wait at least a decade or two, because all the people that were involved in the case, including the racist Sambo judges and prosecutors and cops, have moved on to other things or retired after 15 to 20 years. And now you're dealing with a whole new set of people, and that initial disdain and malice isn't there. Episode 7. This mostly involves preparing for the fourth trial. It also deals with a local election for a new DA to see who will protect black people from racial bias in the court system. I didn't like any of the candidates. They seemed disingenuous and they kept saying black and brown. Like, who the heck is brown? Because these non-black people of color don't call themselves brown on paper. And if I remember correctly, it was a so-called brown that agreed to be a coached witness for corrupt detectives and to get Sean imprisoned in the first place. These quote-unquote browns cannot be grouped in with us. It's dangerous. They have it out for us. And black people are the ones who suffer under the court system bias. Although after a while, Rollins, who was one of the DA candidates, was the person I ended up liking the most, because she did make it seem as though real change was coming, and hopefully it wasn't just lip service. Episode 8, the final episode. I didn't know anything about the case or the outcome, so I was surprised that there wasn't an actual fourth trial. I wonder if there was a piece of Sean that wanted there to be a fourth trial, just so the world would see his innocence. He even spoke about his mixed feelings about how the old DA bashed him.
And the strength, and the decision was based upon that, not innocence at all.
I think the best thing he can do is continue to put his story out there with all the facts. I think this should be a lesson to black people to not talk to police about anything without a lawyer. Sean Ellis is probably thinking, God damn, if only I hadn't casually mentioned buying diapers. That's probably his biggest regret, and he probably beats himself up for it. He should get compensated, but I can understand him not wanting to go into another courtroom ever again and not poke a hornet's nest out of fear. And I give this an 8 out of 10. It was very tragic. I was very hesitant on watching it because I assumed it would be just black torture porn. But I am happy that some of the racist police officers got a taste of their own medicine. Some of them actually spent jail time. So at least something came out of it. So yeah, I give this an 8 out of 10.